Before we start the music, just introduce yourself.
My name is William Patrick Corgan, raconteur, musician, artist, podcaster, cafe owner, and wrestling impresario.
How we doing today?
I'm grumpy.
I like that attitude coming into the game. What kind of music do you listen to?
Mostly old country.
Really?
And a lot of jazz.
What kind of music do you want to focus on? Should we just do a wide range? Should we do
Well, you know, I know your game, and I'm like, is he going to embarrass me with a bunch of obscure indie shit that I don't know?
Throw them on. Let's find out.
All right, let's try this. Yeah, Kiss, shout it out loud. That's what, 76?
Why Kiss?
Well, I had the poster on the wall before I even ever heard the band, which was kind of weird. Somebody gave us a poster. It was this famous poster. Kiss did this like 1776-ish poster. Peter Criss had like a bloody headband. So then I eventually started like, I got to check this band out. And I kind of got it right away. And I always had a soft spot for them. And then getting to know them through the years and interviewing them even.
As a wrestling impresario, there's a lot to be learned as well. There's a connection, I think, between what they're doing aesthetically and their performances and professional wrestling, no?
You could argue that some of the most successful rock bands of all time, and certainly the most successful fight promotion in the world, UFC, they borrowed heavily from wrestling and how it promoted it. Wrestling has a much bigger imprint on American culture than American culture wants to admit.
The president of the United States
weren't they going to have a match?
Is a wrestler, essentially.
The current president versus Vince McMahon in the main event at Ford Field in Detroit. I was actually there, and I watched our current president throw the weakest clothesline I think I've ever seen in my life.
You've never seen Donald Trump fight like this.
Hey, look at this! Donald Trump! Donald Trump!
It's Trump the Thumper.
Everything comes back to wrestling.
It does, yeah.
1 for 1. A good start.
That's the Cars.
Tell me about the Cars.
One of the great underrated bands of all time.
Yeah, I like that.
Rick Ocasek blew my mind. I worked with Rick in the late 90s. I produced one of his solo records. And then when I was doing my deep dive in the Cars, before I was going to work with Rick, I didn't realize he'd written all the songs. My opening line to Rick, from a music point of view, was, "You motherfucker, you wrote all those songs?" He was like, "Yeah." It was so perfect. Rick was a total alpha, by the way. You couldn't really tell it by his sort of demeanor, but behind the scenes, he was a total alpha. I just think Cars is just one of the great American bands. I mean, what he was influenced by, everything from Suicide to Andy Warhol to Vargas, you know, this kind of 80s deco version of the world. He was amazing. A one-take singer in the studio. What a talented guy.
You produced for Rick.
Yeah, I produced.
Rick produced for a lot of other people as well.
Sure, yeah. I know he produced for Weezer most famously.
What was that one?
This is top secret shit. You're not supposed to like film these board. It's got all our ideas on it.
Plus, you're not supposed to film him.
Yeah, you can't film.
He's copyrighted.
Rick was such a talented musician. And the other thing about Rick that people might not realize is he had success kind of later in life. His success with the Cars didn't come till he was like about 30, which is pretty late in the game for most people.
2 for 2.
Oh, good. Okay. Is this John Lennon doing David Bowie, or is it David Bowie pretending to do John Lennon?
John Lennon.
Yeah, Mind Games. I really like this period of Lennon's writing. You know, I know Sean Lennon a little bit, and he's been sort of overseeing all the recent Lennon reissues, doing an amazing job remixing a lot of the material. So I kind of went back and did a deep dive in Lennon's solo career. And it's amazing how many key songs he wrote even as a solo artist. It's pretty mind-boggling. He was the real deal on every level.
Were you a big Beatles fan
huge.
growing up?
I always say Beatles is the greatest band of all time. I don't think anyone will ever beat them. And what's unfair is the Beatles were the perfect band at the perfect time. It's that combination of cultural influence, and that obviously so much happened with the Beatles in 7 years. Lennon, to me, is the perfect auteur in that he had success as an auteur. So for the art class, and here we are in Indie Central, you know, where twirly mustaches run rampant, the art scene is always like, we don't care about success. And, of course, successful people get really grumpy about not being considered artists.
Yeah.
Lennon spoils all that because you could be the ultimate artist and the ultimate commercial salesperson. And so I always use Lennon as a sort of guiding light for me in that you can write those songs that change the world and you can sell records, and there's nothing wrong with that.
And I guess it's at the same time, similar time to Andy Warhol, where it's pop, it's cool, but it's also artistic. They were obsessed with Motown. They were obsessed with early rock and roll records. They wanted hooks in their songs. And then they were like, okay, let's also be artists.
Well, also, McCartney also grew up listening to show tunes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more show tunes in the Beatles than people would maybe transparently realize.
They wanted to be Rodgers and Hart. at one point.
Yeah, the difficulty in talking about anything Beatles at this point is so overexplored. It's like it's almost impossible to have any kind of fresh take.
There's a great book that is recent, like John and Paul, and it's about their partnership, and it goes into the process of all the songs. Because how often do you have a songwriting partnership where they're both, almost every single song they wrote together? There's very few that it was like one of them did it and then the other one.
Yeah, but even later, didn't McCartney kind of try to change it and get it changed so that his songs would be McCartney, Lennon, and so I don't know. Great partnership, though.
Let's keep going.
Oh, it's easy. All the young dudes. Mott the Hoople, obviously.
You mentioned Bowie.
Well, I performed this song on stage with Bowie at his 50th birthday. And I did ask David, why did you choose me to sing All the Young Dudes with you? He goes, well, there's that line, Billy's got stars on his face, and I thought of you. I was like, wow, what a compliment.
How was that experience?
I was amazing. The Pumpkins were on tour on the west coast of America, I think Seattle or Vancouver, something like that. And in order to do the show, I had to get on a plane, come all the way to play Madison Square Garden, do the show, and literally get on a plane and go back and play the next night. So it was a big logistical nightmare. So I get there and I'm all fried and, tour weary, and it's sound check. And, there's all these great artists, Frank Black, Robert Smith, Lou Reed, star-studded cast, and I was very honored to be involved. And so it's my turn for sound check. There was kind of the ego ramp out in the middle of Madison Square Garden, and I'm supposed to go out there with David and play All the Young Dudes, and I think Genie. And when I got out there, and I knew David a little bit personally, so it was kind of weird. I didn't want to say anything because it was his big day, but like he's over there and I'm like back here. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. That's kind of an ego-y thing to kind of put me behind him, right? I kept that to myself for like 30 years. Never said anything about it. Never said anything to David about it afterwards. I just kind of just thought, okay, it's just one of those things. He's David Bowie. Okay, fine. I saw the footage recently and I realized, oh my God, the reason I was back is because he was far shorter than me. So they wanted us to look the same height on camera. And recently I was talking to somebody in Bowie's world, and before I could even get the sentence on my mouth, it was, totally had to do with the height thing. So I just sort of removed this stain on my heart that I've been sort of dissed by David by being pushed back on stage next to him.
An early Charlie Chaplin directing trick.
The other amazing thing, if you don't mind me elaborating, because it was such a beautiful moment, my spot was about 2 hours into the show, and he's totally lathered up. He's sweating. And then we get to the song, he's like, oh, the young dude. And he's doing the full, now I'm getting full David Bowie. Just blew me out of the water. Amazing. Rush. Come on.
Tell me about Rush.
What can I say about Rush? One of the greatest bands of all time. Happy to see they're going to go out and play again. I think it's really cool. Obviously, it's been through a loss with their bandmate, but I think it's perfect that they're finally going to go back out and play. There's so much love for them. I can't even imagine the emotion that's going to be in the room when they start playing again. This is one of the great bands of all time. And, I'm a bit of a hipster killer in my other life when I'm not talking to you. And Rush is the ultimate hipster killer band.
Yeah, why?
The hipsters hated them. They're such a fans band. They never were on the cover of Rolling Stone. They never got any of that love anywhere, especially in this town. And here they are, all these years later. I mean, every rock star pretty much in the world name checks that band. So what does that tell you?
Is it like a technical?
No, there's so much. There's so much heart in Rush.
Yeah.
I think for those of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s, Neil, his lyrics particularly gave voice to what it felt like to be a latchkey kid growing up in suburbia. That sense of alienation. We didn't have the sense of unity that the baby boomers had. They'd already had Woodstock and the Beatles, and what did we get? You know what I mean? We got disco and all this shit. So Rush kind of bonded us together over something that was, yes, it was nerdy and a bit Tolkien, but it also very much of the heart. If you're a Rush fan, you know that band is all heart. The people who aren't fans, they get lost in the technical part. But that's just like the male way of giving a hug. It's like, we're going to riff together. We won't hug, but we'll just riff together, That's Rush.
I like that.
Thank you.
I want to throw an old country one in there.
Is that Tammy Wynette? Yeah. Billy Sherrill, who just recently passed away, I think. Great producer. Amazing. I love that. I know it's called kind of country politan or whatever, but I love that era of Nashville.
Why?
Well, because Nashville was a self-enclosed culture for many, many years and ignored once again by New York.
Yeah.
But in the late 60s, because of some of the success of the great artists, the Johnny Cashes and the George and Tammys and Buck Owens, American culture had to start integrating country culture into Ed Sullivan and stuff because they couldn't avoid it anymore.
They're gonna put me in the movies. They're gonna make a big star out of me.
And country, because it was so built on capitalism, of course, immediately rushed to the other side of the room, abandoned all their raw-hewn principles, and got very glossy. And so there's a lot of people that sort of feel that was the betrayal of country, and it didn't really kind of come back until Waylon and them kind of brought back the rebel country, or whatever you want to call that movement. But I love polished country, especially from this period.
They're just beautiful sounding.
And by the way, don't forget, like when we're listening to stuff like that, that's live.
Yeah.
Those songs are made in like under an hour. They go in, they give the guys the charts, they cook it up, and they get on the mic and they sing 1 or 2 takes, and that's it. They're done. So you're listening to like polished art out the door.
I've been waiting for a guy to come and take me.
Joy Division?
Yeah, there's a nice range of songs.
These sensations make me feel.
Okay, I got one for you. So I've argued for a good 20 years that probably outside of the Beatles, Joy Division is the most influential rock band of the 20th century. I think it speaks for itself.
That's it.
They sort of crystallized post-punk in a way that few bands ever did, and they became the template for so many bands that have followed.
I want to dig in a little bit more.
Okay.
So this album comes out in like 1979. It sounds like something a little bit more futuristic.
Well, it's pop music not made for a pop market, and that's why people are still listening. But where does that music go? I mean, they had, what, one big song maybe? Which was Love Will Tear Us Apart. Yeah, I just think this is one of the greatest bands of all time, and it's such an easy case for me to make. I don't know how to make it. I don't, you know what I'm saying? I should have more robust arguments.
So what are the types of bands where that influence is really felt?
Important bands like the Beatles and Velvet Underground and Joy Division, they create a template by which other bands can create their own music, and they're basically ripping those bands off in an unskilled way, but you don't actually necessarily hear the influence. There's 400 Joy Division bands, but you wouldn't necessarily hear it, because even if they're trying to imitate Joy Division, they kind of really can't.
Yeah.
So that's where it gets weird about those types of things. You can hear Beatles influences in people, but you can't necessarily hear Joy Division influences. I hear it in the way they sort of produce their records. I think it's like that post-pop minimalism thing that was very big in Chicago, and it never leaves here. I mean, they can never get over it here. It's like a religion over here. Siouxsie and the Banshees. Spellbound.
So good.
One of the most underrated bands of all time.
Yeah.
Huge influence on my music. Budgie's probably the greatest alternative drummer that's ever come down the line. And that's saying something. There's been a lot of great alternative drummers, but I think he's the greatest. Siouxsie's one-of-a-kind voice. Really unique music and very distinct periods in their music, and always had success.
Stuff, right?
Yeah. But again, very, very underrated in the American culture, which is strange to me. Not with the alt crowd, but like much bigger, I think, in European circles, although they ultimately came and had a lot of success in America because of MTV. Yeah, I mean, if you've never listened to Siouxsie and the Banshees, I think that's like you're missing out on something.
She just wanted to be part of the scene, didn't just taught herself everything. And
well, she's truly one of those DIY people.
Yeah.
She was part of the early punk movement. There's that famous video of her on TV with like the Sex Pistols when she's like 18.
Are you worried, or are you just enjoying yourself?
Enjoying myself.
Are you?
Yeah.
That's what I thought you were doing.
Always wanted to meet you.
We'll meet afterwards, shall we?
You dirty bastard.
You know, she was part of that OG crowd, and yet she didn't follow that musical idiom like a lot of people did to try to basically milk the Sex Pistols' success in England. I mean, she created totally a wholly distinct part of music, and even had a lot of influence on The Cure's later musical direction, which kind of gets lost in the translation because Robert was in the band for a while, and no, it's a great band. Zeppelin?
No.
Jeff Beck?
Yes. Well, tell me about Led Zeppelin.
I'm a hardcore fan. Like, I have the weird test pressings and all that type of stuff. You know, I'm one of those weirdos. But what I say about Zeppelin is, as a musician, it's unfair. They're so good, it's unfair. Like, how does he sing like that? You know what I mean? Jimmy Page originally wanted Steve Marriott, who was the ultimate singer. So he got basically a guy doing Steve Marriott almost better than Steve Marriott, who becomes Robert Plant. And the rest is history. If anybody's ever heard the early version of Whole Lotta Love that Led Zeppelin ripped off from Small Faces, that's where you got to go down that rabbit hole.
Hey woman, you need cooling. You need cooling. Baby, I'm not fooling.
But nothing about Jeff Beck? We just skip
Tell
over
me about Jeff Beck.
Amazing. You know, when I was a kid, No, but when I was a kid, my father was a very skilled guitar player, but he was very snotty about guitar players.
Yeah.
He was always dismissive of Clapton, and he thought Jeff Beck was the real deal. And I said in an interview, so it became a famous quote. My father once said, "Don't listen to Clapton, he sucks, listen to Jeff Beck." And he told me this when I was like 14, you know.
Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. No. I think Clapton is unbelievable. I know it's hard to even put it in this way. I think Clapton is underrated, which is weird because they've been calling him a god since 1964 or whatever, 65. I think because Clapton took his form of music into a popular form and was able to reinvent it many, many times, I think people don't necessarily appreciate the depth and beauty of Clapton's musical ability and his playing. Jeff Beck becomes more of a kind of like a guitarist guitar player. Like, oh, you got to listen to Jeff Beck. And then I think that's the point my dad was making. Like, he's the real deal. But I think Clapton is just as real a deal. And I don't think, if you look at those three guitar players that grew up around the same time, Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, and Eric Clapton, basically I think 20 miles away from each other.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much the Bible for rock guitar that I grew up with. And that influenced everybody literally we're talking about, including Joy Division.
I'm wondering, can we go before?
Are we going to Lonnie Donegan's skiffle period here? Or?
Can we go before these guys?
No. Chuck Berry now. That's a complicated legacy. Amazing songwriter. Chuck's guitar playing is obviously very influential. Keith Richards would probably punch me in the face if I said, Chuck Berry isn't the guitar player that everyone thinks he is. But I rate Chuck higher as a songwriter than I do as a guitar player. I think his guitar player was cool. But there were other guys playing around that time that were just as influential, Scotty Moore and guys like that, the original Rockabilly Cats. Complicated legacy, though, with Chuck.
This guy instead.
Howlin Wolf. Smokestack Lightning.
How do you feel about him?
He is a true mythical figure. He's like something that steps out of a cartoon, but he's real. And he was a real person. But I can't believe that he was real. And if you listen to those original recordings, it sounds like it was all recorded with one microphone.
Yeah.
And it's super raw. I think at some point somebody put out a comp of all the Howlin' Wolf stuff on Sun. It's unbelievable. It's like the most pure, primitive rock and roll. And speaking of Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page just went like, I'll take that, I'll take that, I'll take that. Those guys ripped off Howlin' Wolf hard. And I think, guys like that end up being bitter for a reason because they didn't necessarily get the financial remuneration that they should have deserved for their influence. And I got to actually play a benefit once with Howlin' Wolf's guitar player, Hubert Sumlin, who lived in Milwaukee and came down to Chicago for a benefit. And I spent like an hour just like talking to him about Howlin' Wolf and his time with him. So amazing experience. So again, like to the average person, if you don't know who Hubert Sumlin is, I mean, Hubert Sumlin basically did things that all those other guys took and stole, but that's where rock can be cruel. We don't always know about those guys' names, but definitely go listen to early Howlin' Wolf.
I'm not really sure where to go. You did mention jazz, so we should throw jazz.
All right, here we go. Is it Monk?
Who do you like to listen to when you listen to jazz? What style do you like to listen to, or what period?
I'm a big West Coast jazz fan.
Uh-huh.
I really like that even guys like Charlie Parker went out west and kind of played this more relaxed form of nighttimey type jazz. I'm a big fan of a guitar player from the West Coast 50s, Jimmy Rainey. I recently found like these 10-inch pressings in Japan, of all places, of original presses of Jimmy Rainey records. So love Oscar Peterson for piano. Monk, of course, amazing composer, but I'm not as big a fan of his playing. But like, I would love to listen to, say, Oscar Peterson play Monk's compositions. Charlie Mingus, of course. I guess I'm very interested in the composers. People can kind of compose on the fly. Also, a big fan of Pharoah Sanders, if you've ever gone down that rabbit hole. Early 70s, late 60s, I don't know if they would call it Afro-consciousness. There was a sort of a reconnection to the spiritual roots of African music, so there was a huge influx of those kind of rhythms. Pharoah Sanders did some amazing records. Also, Alice Coltrane, who was married to John Coltrane, did these kind of amazing, influenced by Indian music. There's a lot of cool stuff. Like jazz is infinite. And unfortunately, I think the American jazz scene has really struggled over the last 30 years, and I don't know what that's about. I don't know if it's the donor class, much like in classical music, kind of constraining jazz to this is what jazz is or something. Like I even love free jazz, Albert Ayler and people like that, Ornette Coleman. I could listen to that stuff all day. And I'm one of those nerds that go finds the original pressings, and I love all that stuff.
Do you listen to contemporary music? Are there artists?
Occasionally, but I guess my standard outline is they're not making music for me.
Yeah.
So even if I can appreciate and I like it and I go, oh, that's really good, and we tend to take those artists on tour with us because we want to help them find an audience, I feel like they're not singing songs for me. And I think that's something I'm very condemnatory about the American market, unlike the European market. We don't have those artists that are 50 plus where people say, I want to hear their new music because I want them to speak from the perspective of being 50. We seem in perpetual adolescence in this culture, and I'm rewarded for that too. I mean, I'm in perpetual adolescence. I mean, look at me. But Bob Dylan and Neil Young and Leonard Cohen and Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings, great artists show that they have plenty to say after a certain age, and it can be age-specific to hey, I'm in a different place in my life, and I got these other things I want to share. And I think that's part of my own aspirational hope, is I still want to be able to contribute in a way that speaks to people. Not necessarily I can't speak to young people, but I want to talk about where I am in my life. I don't need to stick on, I'm 28 and I'm doing drugs, It gets a little boring after a while.
Do you have a favorite contemporary band of Smashing Pumpkins? Like someone who came up around the same time?
Well, we love My Bloody Valentine, and we were friends with them, and that's a band we truly admired. And we toured with some great bands back in the day. Swerve Driver, Garbage, of course. There were so many great bands in that era. And we saw them all play, and in many cases we got to know them. I mean, early Soundgarden was unbelievable. Alice in Chains was unbelievable. Green Day's staying power has been amazing. Billy, at the end of the day, because he's a great songwriter. I'm very proud of our generation. I mean, I'm not friends with everybody in the sense that we hang out, but I'm very proud that the music that we made collectively has sort of endured and has become, in many ways, more valuable with time. So I think it's a cool thing to be a part of.
Do you think that there's going to be a rock resurgence?
Oh, it's happening. Just before I met you, I was talking with a friend of mine, and 60 to 70% of our audience over the last 2 years has been under 25. And that just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And this is no disrespect to our fans over a certain age, but they tend to want to hear like their favorite songs. Younger audiences want to see the band play rock music and are less set specific, which is very interesting and very much a new thing that's kind of come online in the last 2 or 3 years. And I see so much evidence of where young people are getting into young rock bands. So it's definitely coming. I think it's just a matter of finding that one or two bands that break through, like Nirvana did, or like the Pixies did, that can kind of crack open the sky and usher in. Because at the end of the day, if they're not on the award shows, watch the Grammys. There's almost no evidence that rock exists. Yet rock is probably 70% of the touring business in this country. Why is there no rock representation on the Grammys? Even the VMAs, very limited rock representation. So we need young artists to kind of break through and break it all wide back open.
I have one for you. The young people, we talk to regular people on the streets all the time, and young people, like you said, 25 and under, love Smashing Pumpkins.
God bless.
You guys come up all the time.
I honestly think it's the lack of everything being perfect. There's a rawness there that's organic, and that's the word I would use.
Last song, new band.
Let me dance away forever, baby. You should be ashamed.
Almost like a little bit of a Springsteen thing going on there.
The band's called Geese.
Geese?
Geese.
Not
And
Goose.
Not Goose. Goose is another band that's really good.
Really?
Yeah. Another young band. They're more jam band style.
That should be like, they should have a fight.
They both played at Newport Jazz Fest at the same time.
I was going to say Goose. It should be Goose versus Geese, and winner take all.
I'm going to go out on a limb. That could be the band. That's their second album.
Geese.
Really young. Geese. They're like 21.
This is where I pull up and I have a geese tattoo. Is that where we? Boom. Mic drop.
That was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the show. Great to meet you.
You only stumped me with geese. That was good.
I didn't think I was going to stump you, so I had to bring out something new to show you.
Cool. Thank you.